lost both those games. Both of these guys have pulled out some crazy Thresh performances in all the team fights that we've seen. But the big performer across both of these games to me has been Breezy. We saw his Thresh was very good in game one, like we're just talking about, but his Rel in game two, those engages, Eric. Oh, that is what I want to see some more of in this next game.
And the Rel was beautiful, but the follow-up that came out of Weeksy as well. The stuff he was able to pull off on that Kai'Sa. Sadly, not the same on the other side of the Rift, having the MF for Scooped. And a lot of what we saw based off the draft was just, can C9A get onto the backline and eliminate Scoop? If they got Scoop, they just won. If not, then Revival would win the team fight. And it's going to be interesting to see how they react to the draft now that Revival has the counter pick.
And mentioning Rel one more time, because it was banned, does show us that Revival isn't too keen on picking Rel themselves, like I've been talking about throughout today. Rel is a very skill-intensive champion. It was released very recently, so that's not a champion that is very easy to be picking up, and Breezy looks like he's the only Rel in this particular game, but we're seeing Udyr being bounced back and forth. It's going over to Cyber again.
Honey, it's 5 p.m. Time for you to play Udyr again. That's all we've been seeing on these first pick Udyrs over and over and over and over again. Meanwhile, Xayah will get locked in for Scoop, and I really, really do like the Xayah pick for this one. It does enable Scoop a lot to make risky plays, but still have the safety of the ultimate to get away. Meanwhile, on the side of Cloud9 Amateur, they are able to get the Lilia and the Renekton, and we got to throw back to that Volibear again.
Yeah, Cloud9 Amateur going for a slight run back to game two with their composition with Kai'Sa and Lilia yet again, but instead of Gnar, they do pick Renekton this time around. It seems like Gnar was potentially just a counter pick that Speedo feels more comfortable on against these tanks. We do know now that Concept of X is playing a tank again in that Volibear, but they had to blind pick that one. So if you're going to blind pick something, Renekton's a pretty good one to go through. Even though that Gore Drinker was nerfed, he has a multitude of mythic items that he can go for. Most notably, that Prowler's Claw can make him very deadly in the 1v1. So I'm excited to see what Speedo can do on that champion. And XU being back on Lilia is going to be really big for that early game, which he did play so expertly in game two and in game.
And it enables so much when you have the Kai'Sa as well. I mean, it's just a dive comp already when you have Lilia, Renekton, and Kai'Sa all together. Second phase coming in. Of course, the ban's coming in. It's going to be an assault on the support pool for Revival as they take away the Thresh. They want an end to those Hook champions. We saw a lot of Hook champions banned so far, Smacks.
Yeah, the Revival composition is looking like they're going to be locking in their support as their fourth pick too, because they, again, do want to give Sudsy counter picks. So I would expect that these bans are going to come through. And yeah, I was going to say the Rakan has to be banned by Cloud9 Amateur because that is just the easy pairing up with Xayah. Those champions were literally designed for each other. So I got to ban that one away from Flux.
Yeah, sadly, the breakup, not going to see Rakan on the Rift.
Ooh,
Xayah alone.
just in time for Valentine's.
But this makes me excited right here. We do got the Alistair picked up by Plux, so this is going to enable a lot of very, very aggressive hard engages, and it follows up the Udyr as well as the Volibear quite well.
Lots of animalistic champions for Revival. I'm sensing a theme over in that camp. They've got 4 of them, including Xayah, who is a Vastaya. So yeah, I like that theme for their composition. And with those animalistic champions, they've got a hefty front line with the Udyr, Volibear, and Alistar. So Sudsy's going to have to pack a punch with his last champion. Most likely it's going to be dealing a lot of magic damage as well, because it seems like that's what Revival is lacking thus far.
At Big League Finals, he just randomly pulled out the Anivia. If you want to stop some hard engage, I mean, you could do the Anivia again. It didn't work to success, but it is something that's within his champion ocean. One more pick to go over to C9A, waiting for that lock-in. It's gonna be the set. So we got dive boys coming in here.
Yeah, and Cloud9 Amateur actually do lock in some flex picks with their last 2, with the Gragas in the set. One of those is going to be going, well, actually, now that I look at it, it might be Renekton mid, because Captain Shrimps does have an affinity for these melee champions, all of which the last 3 are. So Cloud9 Amateur still have their hands in multiple cookie jars at the same time. I'm excited to see where these champions do land, and it is up to Sudsy to pull out some very creative champion, or just Azir. All right, well, that's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, Azir gets locked in by Sudsy, and I mean, it is a champion ocean. There's nothing too spicy here. He's just going for the shallow part. So our team
Yeah.
comps are locked in, and as I was saying, I do really want to focus on Cloud9 Amateur comp, because I was saying Dive Boys, this goes so hard once we get into the skirmishes, especially if you want to set up tower dives.
Yeah, they're even more melee than Revival, like I was talking about before, with the super big front line of Udyr, Volibear, Alistar. Now with Gragas set, all Cloud9 can do is engage. They need to go in, or else they literally don't have the range for their auto attacks, let alone the rest of their spells. And they have to be able to get in there and punch you with this set locked in as their last choice. So yeah, for Cloud9 Amateur, there's only one way to win this game, and it is through that front line of Revival. I'm really excited to see these brawls. And honestly, we were harping on this Azir pick for Sudsy a little bit because it's not as creative. But realistically, this pick is really solid against a composition like that. You have your soldiers to help zone you away, and if things get really nasty for you, you can just use the Emperor's Divide and push everyone away quite literally.
Yeah, the better Anivia wall, pretty much. You know,
yeah, it moves.
Not gonna live up to my needs, my desires, sadly enough. One thing we do definitely want to see in this game is what happens if Revival are able to get an early game gold lead. I mean, game 1 and game 2 was just C9A taking those early advantages. What if Revival aren't playing from behind and still finding those micro-oriented team fights?
That is a question that I would love to see answered for the sake of Revival in this third and final game. It would appease the analysts that we have on our desk as well, as like I mentioned, they all predicted Revival to win. So if Revival do come out swinging with that gold lead right out the gate, then yeah, those team fights get even easier for them. And with that scaling champion like the Azir coming through for Sudsy, he can really become devastating even as the game goes on throughout. And yeah, Cloud9 Amateur have had their number in the early game every single game so far. I feel like Revival do still have some ways that they can attack this, and they do have the Udyr this time again on red side. So this champion was just nerfed very slightly, though. He still is very difficult to deal with at realistically all stages of the game, especially if your composition is only melee.
Yeah, and Revival do have a lot of sustained DPS that only gets better with time. We got some fine wine DPS in there in both the Azir and the Xayah, and a lot to try and protect those two picks, even in their kits alone. So we can find those big skirmishes that Revival are looking for, but what we want is the Revival early game. We want to see them find their way in, and we'll see if they can do that as we are going to hit the Rift. C9A versus Revival, game number 3, the final one of the day. Until we hit to game number 2, that is the second matchup of the day coming on later on. But right now, going to wrap up C9A versus Revival.
Yeah, it looks like they're not quite thinking about those 5v5 level 1 plays this time around. Just going to fan out. Not liking the result of the second game, excuse me. And I can't blame them. Nobody died. It was actually rather boring. So they're just gonna do the other boring play and just fan out and make sure that they have their vision lines, as we do get a nice sweeping shot of the entire Rift. Look at all those guys just marking their post so elegantly.
How dare our producers be this good? Just, you know, instead of drawing the line of scrimmage and showing it us from the same old angle that we've seen, we're seeing this dramatic Michael Bay shot come in. Look at Pluck's dance. Look at those dance moves.
Kind of makes me wish that he went for the Moo Cow skin, because then he'd have the cowbell going for us and we get some nice music, but that is okay. I will forgive him if he has a sick Alistar, which I think he will, because like we mentioned, they really do want to have their early game on lock in this game, and what better champion to do that with than Alistar? He literally comes online at level 2, and then from there on out, he is the exact same champion. You just headbutt Pulverize, that's it. So let's see if he can actually make that early game impact. It's going to be a little difficult for Cyber, though, as his blue buff has been stolen.
Yeah, blue buff's going to get stolen away, and I haven't seen the Azir versus Set matchup too often, so I'm kind of curious as to how lane priority is going to play out here, because if you're able to get it on the top side and the mid side for C9A, that could just be 3 buff right there, because it'd be way too risky for Cyber to go in and try and get a blue.
Ooh. Yeah, for Cyber, I mean, he could potentially get this early game going for him. We saw just how devastating the Volibear trades can be in the first few levels, so potentially Concept FX can go for a second time of that, and it looks like he actually is. He actually is pushing that wave in against Speedo, and it does leave way for Cyber to go for this blue buff, and we're seeing a similar trade in mid lane too. Sudsy, with his range advantage, is getting the better end of Captain Shrimps right now, so it actually is working out as you hoped it would here, Deserex. Cyber is getting that map split.
Getting it split thanks to the priority coming in the top and mid lane. XU cannot really do too much in this case. He was able to get the steal from earlier, but it's just going to result in tit for tat. It's going to be a blue and red for a blue and red. The invade comes in, not the invade, returning back to his jungle. Always see it backwards when you're with XU, you invade so much, but can clear out that red buff, and it's going to be Cyber staying over towards this top side, so potentially looking for some shenanigans over on the top lane as well, as both top laners are starting to get low.
And going for this map split does, however, mean that Speedo doesn't really get to use his champion's greatest strength, which is his early game damage and lockdown threat. So he has chunked out Concept thus far, but let's see if he goes a little too far forward. This is a map split. Speedo should know this.
Did kind of slip out of the bush early. I'm wondering if he was spotted, but it's better not to waste the time. You know, you don't want to stay in that bush all day and get yourself behind in the CS, and that's why XU is not wasting any time going for the scuttle.
Yeah, going straight for that one. And we do see, though, that because Cyber has been sort of routed around the map, forced to go all the way from his blue buff, which he didn't get to take, over to his red, does mean that XU is up 2 camps fully. Does get that recall again very early. Took that bottom lane scuttle, as we see in that picture-by-picture there. And now he has the Ionian Boots' Lucidity again. We were talking about how good these boots are to get early. You get 20 ability haste, and you get to reduce the cooldowns of your summoner spells. It feels really good.
And the game, teleport coming back in for Concept of X to get back into lane. You can see Speedo making an attempt to crash the wave, not really going to find too much. Still, though, 2 cloth armors picked up by Concept of X, so he will have a pretty good item advantage in the mid lane. Meanwhile, Sudsy gets pulled in, trying to hop away. Cyber will be there to provide some backup, looking to get that bear slap, and Sudsy gets the return to DPS.
Knocking out Sudsy a little bit is going to be really nice. Now they can push in this wave and make sure Captain Shrimps gets a really good base off too. And Cyber is left to keep clearing his camps, which he is still behind on. Like we mentioned, XU able to fully clear out his own jungle alongside the enemy blue entire quadrant. Got his recall off first, and now he can bully out Cyber a little bit and go back to farming on this Lilia, which Lilia does oh so expertly. You have the Q, which is just a 3-second Darius Q. You get to just keep doing that all the time to those camps. It feels great.
There's always those aggressive trades going on at the top lane. Meanwhile, it's just a run-in, harassment, run-out. Try and punish the cooldowns is the big thing. Once someone burns something, once you see the stun go out to catch a minion or something from Speedo, Concept of X will be sure to go in and try and punish. That is always the top lane game when it comes down to League of Legends. But all that being said, gotta look at Cyber because he's looking to try and sneak in a potential Drake here. Teleport's coming out. Sudsy will show up in the mid lane just to provide some presence and priority to ensure that Cyber grabs his Drake. He almost ran really low right there, meanwhile.
Yeah. Not quite needing to sneak at the end there because Scooped and Plux did push in that wave, but yes, he did get in that timer where XU was going and clearing his topside camp, so very nicely done by Cyber. Does give his team first dragon yet again, as they did get that in the second game, not the first one. But so far, the early game is even, which by my calculations is a very good thing for Revival in this series.
Yeah, Revival, if we could see that mid-game micro that we've seen so many times from them, and they're not at a deficit, yeah, it stands to be a very, very good thing for Revival. So C9A, they're going to try and set up something over here, just clearing out the scuttle. I believe they're shoving in for something more. Nah, just going to take the recalls for now. Take the backs, be able to find the purchase. But in the top lane, the bear slams on in. Teleport's going to be used coming out of Captain Shrimps to ensure this dive doesn't go through.
And making sure Captain Shrimps teleports top lane is actually a really big deal. We can see that based on the creep score here, that he's actually really, really far behind. That's almost 3 entire waves going over to Sudsy. Just the bowling ball. I don't think they're going to get this gank off onto him unless they go for something really crazy, but they don't. They're just going to walk away, and Sudsy gets to keep farming up, and he has the wave pushing into him again, which means that he just can continue ballooning that lead and get some more gold into the pockets of this scaling Azir.
Setting up for the gank. Plux trying to show up with the headbutt pulverize. Captain Shrimps will be the wiser to it. Now this game going even, and it's, well, kind of strange for us. The last 2 games we've seen, it's just been go, go, go. Cloud9 looking for any kill they can find. This time we're getting more of a simmer of a game. Both of these teams know what's at stake. You know, we do have the Swiss brackets that we're going through where you do need 3 wins, so every game does matter for this matchup.
The 3-game Cloud9 Amateur Circus seems to have a calming Act 3. To put it nicely for them. They haven't been able to find these explosive fights in the early game that we've been seeing, but they do get a rotation up to this Rift Herald. They've got all 5 members here, so if they can keep this position going, I think this is just going to be Cloud9 Amateur picking up that Rift Herald for themselves, but Concept does get the entire bot side to himself, so we'll see how many plates he can actually get in response.
Gets it to himself and just trying to clear up whatever minion waves he can find, get that CS lead going. Not even going for the plates just yet. Nope, gonna double back and be able to grab those and try and get that lead going for him in this Renekton matchup that does start going off rather early. You see, it's going to be met with the lane swap, so Speedo now takes his recall, heads over towards his bot side, and we pretty much just flip the map as the pressure is now going to be over towards the Rift Herald.
As is typically true of Rift Herald rotations, though, the team that doesn't get the Rift Herald does end up ahead slightly before that Herald does actually pop. And as there's no fighting around it either, that is even more true. So Revival a little bit ahead now across all of their lanes, well, except for bot lane, actually. I'm looking at this now. But speaking of bot,
oh boy, here we go. Emperor's Divide comes out, shoving him further into no man's land. Speedo tries to flash forward, gets the stun, but the flash was too fast out of Sudsy. First blood goes over to Concept of X and Revival.
Yeah, even more going over to the bot side of Revival. They set up, wait, look at this.
They are not done. Here comes C9A trying to find some vengeance. Can't get anything. Revival will walk away with the 1-0 kill.
We're continuing to see that Captain Shrimps is going for this roam-style mid lane at the detriment of his CS in the mid lane, and he's almost down a level as well. I believe Sudsy will be hitting 9 well before him because of that too, so that's going to feel a little bit rough when it does come to these mid games, and he hasn't actually found any killing marks on this set either. But let's take a closer look at this bot lane dive. They do have just a very easy access to this. They have the access to turn off the turret with the Ohm Wrecker passive of the Volibear ultimate. Shout out to Mad Magical, he loves that item. And yeah, they get that Renekton kill very easy.
Yeah, seeing that kill, seeing that death animation is kind of hilarious. Just the toy Renekton screaming in the air, "God damn you kids!" and getting taken out, unfortunately. But it puts Revival in a situation where they are ahead now, and we might see that dream come true, Smacks. We might finally see Revival with the gold lead going into the mid game. I know I'm counting a little bit too early now, but I would like to see what C9A can do from behind.
Yeah, Revival are setting up for this dragon too. They've got as many members as Cloud9 did for the Rift Herald, so if history repeats itself, then they will get this, but they just wanted to fight first.
Flux gets knock up. They're going after XU, able to get the stun from the Alistair, but the sleep buys so much time. Not going to be able to get the engage that they wanted. On retreat now is going to be Revival, but Captain Shrimps wants to stop it right there. Out comes the Feather Rain. Sudsy just deletes Captain Shrimp. That damage came out of nowhere, Smacks, and they're not done just yet. They're going after Breezy. Breezy forced the flash to the wall to stay alive, and Revival, they kind of fake it out. They say we're going to back off, then instantly put their foot on the gas pedal.
Wow, they stalled out on Cloud9 Amateur's side really, really well with the Lilting Lullaby, but once you use a cooldown like that on the disengage, that just means you have to back away from that. You have to just give the dragon up to Revival because they will win the fight if you try for it. But Captain Shrimps didn't get the memo. He goes right into the back line. He does force Scoop to use his ultimate, but whoa.
Ooh, looking for the engage again onto Breezy. They know Breezy's flash is down, so he is fed to the wolves. Scoop will be able to grab kill number 1 of the game. Meanwhile, Saber kind of playing around here with Wixie, making sure he doesn't get to that tier 2 tower, but Wixie will find his escape path. It's not over just yet because he doesn't know there's a Sudsy waiting over that wall, but too close to the tower. Revival, so much pressure on this bot side.
Oh, Desrex, I think we're actually getting our wish in this third game. I think we're actually seeing Revival with an early lead, and we've seen how well they play these fights, even down about 8,000 gold at some points in the last two. They still come out with fight wins. So the fact that they're up now is such a huge deal, but can they back away from this one? Scoop doesn't have ult.
Doesn't have ult. He does have Flash and Cleanse available. There comes the Cleanse, gonna stop the sleep as Pluck's trying to buy time for his ADC. He's not long for this world altogether. The autos are coming out, but there's not enough feathers to find much else, and C9A finally find a response on the map.
A one response kill onto Plux. They can't quite get Scoop. They do get his Cleanse, though. So the next time they try that Lilting Lullaby, it will likely stick. So that's a really big deal.
Oh, jumps on in, looking for the kill on Speedo, and underneath his own tower, just bashes the Croc's head in.
Wow! Concept of X beating the early game champion of Renekton in lane with a solo kill. That's incredible stuff coming out of Concept. He's really turning it on in this third game at match point for both teams when it counts the most. Concept coming up huge. Observers, why are you bullying that chicken ward?
All that armor is paying off. There's not much Renekton can do. He doesn't have much itemization working for him. Just having the Phage and the Kindle Gem is not going to do much when you're going against a Volibear who's been slowly gaining a CS lead and finding kills on the sidelines all meanwhile.
Well, you and I both saw what Concept of X was able to do in the flanks in game 1 on this bear too, and clearly the flanks are not the only thing that he's good at as we go for another bear dunk onto the turrets, turning those off again and again and again, and there's the animation again. His arm falls off in that skin. That's so funny.
Oh, they're not done with Speedo. It's gonna... Oh, come on, don't go for it. Okay, Plux is gonna spare Speedo a little bit of that cyberbullying that's been going on over on the top side. Just standing around that blast line, seeing if Speedo will get closer. Speedo's like, nah, none of that. You jump over that wall.
Speaking of cyberbullying, Cyber is actually down very heavily in the jungle. He's down 5 entire camps. So he hasn't quite been able to farm as much as XU, but he is still making a really big impact across the map, like with these dragons. He's been able to take both of those. But this is, again, the cascading snowball of what XU was able to do at level 1 alongside his bot side. So for XU coming through as really the sole magic damage dealer of his team, it really does matter that he is this far ahead. It really does matter that he's getting his items before Cyber. And I'm really excited to see if he can make these team fights stick. But again, Revival are really good at that aspect of the game, and they're actually ahead. So it's going to be really hard.
And now the Gator and Bear meeting in the bot lane again. Bear's going to take the recall Concept of X. Now I'm going to take it to Speedo again. It's been cracking me up, just the fight that's been going on between these two top laners and how vicious Concept of X has been on this Volibear. But you know what they say about polar bears, right? You don't fight back. It's good night. You go down. I don't know if you know the whole saying about bears. It's like brown, lie down, black, fight back, white, good night.
Sounds like I don't want to get into a fight with polar bear then.
No, not
really.
at all.
I don't think I would survive a fight with any polar or with any type of bear. To be completely honest, I think I am a little bit too fragile for that.
I think we both are. I don't think we want to go against, one of nature's refined killing machines, as Concept of X is showing us over on this top side.
Oh, man. Speaking of top, though, do you see Cloud9 Amateur pop that Rift Herald up there? It is just Concept and a straggler Plux to try to defend this, but it does look like the entire turret is going to go down. But again, Cloud9 are neglecting the dragon. They leave that pit completely wide open. Even XU shows up to that topside party. So this is likely just going to be Revival going to Soul Point again. But this time it's 3-0.
Captain Shrimp's going to show up, but, it's a support. Not support, excuse me, mid laner. Regardless, he doesn't have Spite nonetheless. Now Breeze is going to show up. They might be going for the counter engage here. Breezy looking to set up something. The flash over the wall. Cyber knows better. He's not willing to risk that one. He wants to keep this early lead over to Revival. XU, however, looking to find some punishment. Doesn't realize that Sudsy's over the wall. The damage is coming through. He goes golden, but he's just buying time for his team to get there. The inevitable death comes through. Captain Shrimp, Speedo, Wixie, Breezy, the whole squad has shown up to try and find some revenge as the showstopper goes out, pulls Sudsy in with them, clears the wave to get tower aggro, but it's going to go on to Speedo. Cyber is so deep into no man's land, there's nowhere else for him to go. So many resources used to pick up those those 2 kills. But look at the top lane, look at the mid lane. Revival are still getting global gold.
Yeah, it is a nice punishment in terms of kills for Revival's willingness to just go for that dragon, even though they didn't have their entire team. So they do pick up a couple of kills. They do pick up them onto Sudsy and Cyber, which is a really big deal. But as you mentioned, they lose priority in mid and top. Both of those turrets go down. They still lose the dragon at the end of the day, too. So they're still under threat of losing that Infernal Soul. So even though Cloud9 Amateur do win out on that exchange in particular, they get that top turret, they get the mid fight, they're still down quite heavily in gold, and that's not even accounting for the dragons that come through too. We can't see just how much gold those are worth at the moment, but it's got to be even more.
Yeah, so now setting up for this soul point, we have 3 minutes and 30 seconds before we do get there. But before that, there's a Baron that's going to be on the map soon enough. So got to keep your close eye on that. C9A do look like they're a little bit more Baron oriented. It is the objective that's going to come up sooner. So yeah, why not? Keep getting the vision there. Keep trying to deny Revival from getting their deep vision in there, because that is when they work the best. When they're able to get into the jungle and have their skirmishes, especially with that Alistair to disrupt the fights.
I was a little bit worried about Cyber right there, but he is very fast. As I'm sure everyone is aware, Udyr, one of the fastest champions in the whole game, rivaled by, I think, just Quinn most of the time, so he gets out of that one. But yeah, just as you're mentioning, Cloud9 Amateur really have been favoring the top side pit with the Rift Herald and the Baron in this series, and especially in this game, it's signified by their complete lack of the dragons in this one. They do get a brief moment of mid priority actually for Cloud9. They pick up this entire turret for seemingly for free. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, catching Revival with their shoes untied as Revival try and just stumble their way towards the mid lane. Rotation works in the favor of C9A, and having that mid lane turret goes down means you can open up the rift more and get more vision for C9A, which is something they desperately need to find their comeback potential.
Yeah, catching Revival slipping is actually super huge because like I said, the gold lead is only 1,000. Cloud9 Amateur certainly can come through. We've seen very, very contested team fights from both teams, and yes, Revival has been more impressive all throughout, but that's mainly just because of how far behind they have been in the fights. They were still able to come through and win a few of them from such a deficit. Potentially, we could be seeing Cloud9 Amateur do the same in this game, but it does feel like it's going to be a bit before that happens, where we're hitting a little bit of a breather for both teams at the moment.
And we talked about this being like kind of a macro versus micro matchup. You know, the micro kings being Revival, macro kings being C9A. It's interesting the way this is working out now, because when you're good at macro play, you're good at building up those passive gold leads. So even though Revival are getting the advantage, even though they've taken out all the outer turrets, they're only 1k ahead at the end of the day, Smacks.
Yeah, but again, their team fights are super threatening. We've seen it all throughout this series, and they're itching for one right now. As you can see, they're trying to find some more positioning in this bottom side of the jungle, realizing that it's a bad idea though, because Scooped is nowhere near. He doesn't even have his ultimate, so gonna definitely want to wait for that to be here. But dragon up in 40 seconds. This could just be Revival taking it and all but winning the game, because we know how powerful Infernal Soul can be.
Yeah, I mean, what are C9A doing here? They're really not setting up anything. They're just clearing waves and then posturing up back towards mid. This time, you finally have some purpose. They're setting it up towards the Baron area to try and play this tug-of-war. Do you want Dragon? Well, you're going to give us Baron. In this case, it's going to be Speedo taking a teleport for the flank. He's trying to find his way in, but Concept of X will be able to spot him out early. Now Cyber goes on the far end. XU trying to dive on in, and here comes the skirmish. Here comes the fight. Ooh. Scooped is the first one to fall. XU will be able to claim him, as it's going to be C9A losing more and more as they're trying to survive this fight. They will find the kills they needed. Onto Concept of X, onto Cyber, onto Scoop to deny the Dragon Soul and be able to find their footing in this game, get that gold lead, and even posture up for Baron.
Yeah, the teleport flank coming through from Speedo and then this flash away from XU just feels like completely disoriented everything that Revival wanted to do. They thought they had a pickoff onto XU. They thought they had the time to kill him and then set up for this dragon, but little did they know everyone else on the side of Cloud9 was in position and ready and willing to go for this. They not only get the Dragon, they not only get the fight, they get the Baron too. They have enough time to do all three at the same time. And now the gold is back in the hands of Cloud9 Amateur, as we've seen in all the early games, except for this one in this series.
Okay, now I'm wondering what's going to go on, because now Revival is at their home. They're back. Yeah. they're back at a gold deficit, and this is when they're most dangerous. They had the gold lead, they just lost a fight. Now that they have the deficit, we're going to see them turn on. Let's see it go through, Smacks. Let's see what Revival has to bring. Cloud9 played from behind. They finally got that gold lead. They have all the objectives they needed to make sure they don't fall in this game, to make sure they don't give anything too juicy over to Revival.
I will say that is a very optimistic approach to Revival's game state right now. I'm sure they're rather panicky at the moment after losing all three things at the same time, Baron, Dragon, and the fight. Of course, they still are at Soul Point, so in 3 minutes time, 3.5, excuse me, they will be able to contest for that one and potentially get that Infernal Soul that I've been hyping up a little bit in this game. So that is all the damage that they realistically need to go for these picks that we saw. Like, yes, XU did have his flash to get out of that fight. Yes, he did have his ultimate, but if that Infernal Soul is there, he's very likely dead to all of these really bulky champions, because Infernal Soul is genuinely, it feels most oppressive when it's on a bunch of tanks, because then they can't die and you just get killed instantly by all the burst.
And right here, Revival trying to respond to C9A as they set up for a siege over on this bot lane. Flux looking to be a threat. That headbutt pulverized Sudsy, meanwhile, on the sidelines. You go look at C9A, though. They do got the split push going. Captain Shrimps in the top lane, bringing a nice, big, juicy, baroned up wave towards that top side to try and divide Revival. Get them in every lane, split them apart. It's working so well so far for C9A. They do have the gold lead. They have a lot of momentum on their side. They still got a bit of time with this Baron. Let's see what they can do with it.
This is a very nice three-pronged approach to closing out this game for Cloud9 Amateur. Very, very patient, very calculated, going for all of these lanes at the same time. There really isn't anything else to be going for other than the enemy jungle camp. So this is really well done for Cloud9 Amateur to go for all of this at the same time. They have yet to take a turret with it, though, but with all the minions and jungle camps that they're denying, this is still very nicely done.
I mean, one thing I do give Cloud9 Amateur credit for is the fact that they do respond to win conditions. What we've been seeing in game number 1 and 2 is Cloud9 Amateur are willing to fight for that final Drake and make sure that Dragon Soul doesn't get secured. That being said, though, they do let themselves get into that Dragon Soul point at the first place. I mean, you see, it's 3 dragons unanswered before C9A were finally able to pick up one. But this is always going to have that pressure on the map, that thought in the back of C9A. Infernal's coming up soon. We have to deal with it.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin there for Cloud9 Amateur. They do need to worry about that dragon, but at the same time, if they go for the fights and the flanks that they have been, especially in that last dragon attempt, then they've got it in the bag, it feels like, because it's a minute left. Because Teleport is on a champion that is a higher level in the game, it actually is a lower cooldown, so Speedo is going to have that for this fight if he wants to just stay in the base and get home guard, or if he wants to go to a side lane, he can do that because he does have the teleport available for when that fight begins. Looks like he's not even going to risk it, though. He's just going to go straight to the bottom side and be there for that dragon spawn when it does come.
And with Baron being down now, this is a bit of reprieve for Revival. They can bide their time a little bit, try and find a way to set up for this Infernal Soul. Captain Shrimps starting to get a little bit isolated here. He does have the showstopper if he needs to cover some ground, but Cyber's in a bad spot. I'm not even sure if Captain Shrimps will spot it out. He does get spotted out now that there's a control ward put down into that bush. Plux trying to get closer to Captain Shrimps, but here comes the teleport. It's going to be a flank coming in as Speedo looking to join the fight. Cloud9 Amateur lose one member right off from the get-go as Wixie jumps in with the killer instinct, going after Plux, who does have the ultimate running. Sudsy trying to stay alive with the Azir. The sustained damage is there. Plux with the knockup. Sudsy still alive. Speedo wants to go after Sudsy. Sudsy still wailing away with those soldiers. No matter what Speedo does, it's not going to be enough if he can't take down Sudsy, and he will fall. Another one going through. Revival able to take the team fight, and you know what that means? They secure the Dragon Soul.
The Dragon Soul comes through, and all of the tanks on Revival's side come through in the end there also. Look at how difficult it is for Cloud9 to actually break through this front line and get to Sudsy. They do have a nice engage coming through, but then everyone, look at all these giant health bars in the way. Sudsy, yes, he does get Killer Instinct on, but then he drops the soldiers, he drops his ultimate, and he barely makes it out so that he can keep auto-attacking with all of his soldiers to his heart's content as this fight continues forward. Honestly, I'm shocked that Wixie stayed alive for as long as he did, so props to him, but still, it's Sudsy who stays alive the longest, and it's Sudsy who's able to deal all of this damage, and it's going to be even more now that they have the soul.
A beautiful position for Revival to be in. We talked about that micro. It shined through in that last fight when Cloud9 had a pretty strong lead to boot. They still got a lead going for them. About 1K does separate these two teams. And now with Dragon Soul, it really is pressure onto C9A because Baron spawns in 10 seconds.
Baron could just be the end of this series, depending on who takes that one, or who takes the fight, rather, because these bases are potentially very fragile depending on how many members of your team do die in this oncoming fight, because there's gonna be a fight. We know these teams, we know this series, we know exactly how this fight is gonna get started. It's just who ends the fight.
Now the line's drawn once again, that line of scrimmage that we're so used to. Plux goes for the engage. Emperor's Divide onto 2. Breezy caught out. Out comes the Featherstorm, buying time to deal with Speedo. Speedo able to get on that backline, will be able to take down Scoop, but now he has to deal with the Bears, Cyber, and Plux. Make that a cow. The bear is over. Meanwhile, looking at Captain Shrimps, and he will hunt him down. Cyber grabs one. Speedo on the run. Bear stance comes out, but that is not the focus. You don't want the Croc, you want the Baron.
Lux with the Killer Instinct to flash forward with his headbutt. Pulverize completely stops Cloud9 in their tracks. Look at this. Just instantly, right off the bat, they use all their ultimates on these teamers, and from there, it's just completely lights out for Cloud9. They lose 2 members, and they lose 3 members, excuse me. It's even worse than I thought it was, Deserex, because this engage was so clean from Revival support and the follow-up from mid and top here too. Super, super big play from Plux on the Alistar.
Beautiful play to come through, and it sets Revival in such a good position. Now, it's not only that Dragon Soul that we talked about earlier, it is Baron. They have all the tools they need to be able to deconstruct the base of Cloud9 Amateur, and there's not much C9A can really do about it.
Yeah, from here, if you're Cloud9 Amateur, you just have to hope that your Nexus doesn't explode in 3 minutes, and then potentially get the Elder Dragon. Other than that, it is all but over for Revival at this stage of the game. They now have that gold lead back in their hands. They have the Baron, they have the Infernal Soul, they have a potential pick on the Captain Shrimps.
Yeah, trying to find Cap Shrimps, but he will be able to walk away. There's only so much the Bear stance can do, but now here comes the siege in the mid lane. Cloud9 Amateur, excuse me, trying to defend this as best as they can. They do have the Azir turret. Meanwhile, behind them, Revival have an escape route, and they will take it as they rotate over towards this top wave, looking to deconstruct any towers that they see. This base belongs to them. The jungle belongs to them. This victory all but belongs to them. They just need those final steps to be able to close this out.
Revival showing us that they are demolition artists with this Baron, and they are thorough. They completely clean swept through that mid lane. All the structures there. They now start their reign of terror on that top side. Already taking that inner one, attempting to take the next one. And for Cloud9 Amateur, it's so tough to battle back because you're against the Infernal Soul. You're against the Xayah range through too, and everyone's so tanky.
They're going right after that inhibitor tower. Here comes the showstopper, pushed right back out as Captain Shrimp. He gets a lot of damage on that backline, but it's not going to be enough because 2 unanswered kills come through. Speedo jumps in. There's the Killer Instinct. Wixie is fighting for his life, but his life is forfeit. Another kill, double going through, and make that the triple kill. It is surgical. It is precision. It is scooped. Getting a quadra kill. Revival able to take a 2-1 series to Cloud9 Amateur to start off Challengers Uprising Season 2.
Revival had a very tough fought series this entire way through. They lost both of the early games in the first 2 games. They come into game 3 and they say, no, we're not letting that happen again. We are winning early game this time. We are winning all of these dragons, and we are winning the first series of Challengers Uprising. Holy moly.
A beautiful game and a beautiful series altogether, Smacks. I mean, what more?